It's always kind of sad when a filmmaker whose work you really admire and really enjoy makes a film that you are really disappointed in. And that is the topic for today's episode. This is the Kazdoy Closet. I'm Kazdoy. That's my closet, full of all the stuff that I love. And today, a director who made one of my top 10 favorite films, but his latest one I really struggled to get through. Let's check it out. The director I'm referring to today is David Lynch, and as I was preparing this episode, I realized how many of his films I actually have in my collection, starting with Eraserhead from 1977. This is quite a surrealistic black and white film. I saw it in the theater in the 70s. At the end of the screening, David Lynch himself happened to be there. He was really not very well known at this point. This was the only film he made. And the audience asked him questions, but of course he was quite evasive in his answers because he wants you to interpret the film however you want to. I did an episode about Eraserhead. You can check that out if you'd like to. But after Eraserhead, I'm going to try to go through this filmography very quickly to get to the main film I'm talking about. Came The Elephant Man in 1980. This was produced by Mel Brooks' company. He was smart enough to recognize David Lynch's talent. He referred to David Lynch as Jimmy Stewart from Mars, which is kind of funny. This is a much more mainstream film, one of David Lynch's more mainstream films. I actually had a chance to see the play The Elephant Man at one point, and I know David Bowie played the title character on Broadway. Didn't get to see that one, unfortunately, but really enjoy The Elephant Man. In 1984, David Lynch directed Dune, and pretty much disowned it. I think he was just about to take his name off of it. And I did an episode on this one too, which you can check out. I actually prefer this version of Dune to the more recent one, and in that episode I explain why. And then in 1986, he made Blue Velvet, which is, I think, in my top 10 most favorite films of all time. And I think this film best reflects David Lynch's themes and obsessions, such as obsessions with 50s music, the dark side of life and the dark side of America underneath the sort of suburban veneer or facade, you might say. He also brings out character actors who you may have not seen for a while, some kind of corny, half-funny dialogue that's repeated, and then again some surrealistic, dreamlike touches as well. I did make the mistake because I really loved this film when I saw it in the theater in 1986, and I made the mistake of recommending it to somebody whose cinematic tastes were pretty much middle of the road, but I wasn't thinking. And the next day she said, "Why did you make me go see this film? Because it does have some pretty dark stuff in it." Wild at Heart came after that. That's from 1990. I don't have that one. I think I used to, but I must have traded it away or something. I'm not a huge fan of that. I think it's a little bit over the top, a little bit indulgent, which is a word I might end up using too much in this episode. And it's kind of goofy also. But then Twin Peaks came next. And this, of course, was the television series, 1989 to 91, the original series. And Lynch directed 6 episodes of this. This I was really into, and I would even call this, for me at least, a water cooler show because I was still teaching high school at the time, and we used to talk about the episodes the day after they aired with some of my colleagues who were also into it. And the really great thing about Twin Peaks too is, at least for me, I would see it reflected in real life. Like I'd see a person or a place or some sort of situation, and I would say to somebody who was also a fan, "It's a Twin Peaks moment, isn't it?" So I thought that was pretty cool. It returned later on as a Showtime series called, I think, Twin Peaks: The Return. A lot more difficult to get into, a lot more challenging. I liked it. It was not very easy to understand, but somehow the way it was constructed in an hour segments, it moved along and it kept you interested, even though you really weren't quite sure what was happening all the time. Twin Peaks Fire Walk With Me was a feature film also called from 1992, and that's part of this box set of Twin Peaks, the entire mystery. Now, I haven't seen that film in quite a while, so I'm not going to really reserve judgment on. I'm going to reserve judgment on it until I watch it again. Lost Highway from 1997 was his next feature film. I actually have two versions of this. This is the Kino version, and this is the new Criterion version. I double dip because this one has a bunch of extras on it. Anyways, I saw this in a theater with a couple of teacher friends of mine, and the three of us thought it was terrible and thought it was one of the most ridiculous films we ever saw. We were laughing at it, and I watched it again recently, and you know what? It's good. I mean, I liked it a lot more now. I think I got it a lot more. You know, sometimes it depends what mood you're in. After that, he made The Straight Story from 1999, easily his most mainstream film. It's almost hard to believe that it's directed by David Lynch, because it does not really fit in with his other films. It's about this old guy who's driving this tractor across country to see his brother. I need to watch this one again. I haven't seen it in a long time. Mulholland Drive was the next film from 2001. This was originally a TV pilot for ABC, but they passed on it. And when I first watched it in the theater, it was tough to really comprehend what was going on for a lot of it. I watched it again fairly recently, liked it a lot more the second time, but is getting a little bit overindulgent, especially with the whole theme of people's personalities and actresses playing more than one role, and who are they now? And it gets a little confusing in there, but still, it's a fun trip, and I do like Mulholland Drive, though not one of my favorites and probably a little too long. Interspersed throughout all these films, and still today he makes a bunch of short films, but that is going to bring us to his last and latest feature film, which is Inland Empire from 2006. Inland Empire is a long 3 hours in length. It's in color and black and white. It's about a woman who is playing a part in a film, but then her film role starts to blend into her real life or something like that. And the two main stars, Laura Dern and Justin Theroux, both have said they're not sure what this film is about. This is David Lynch at his most indulgent, really. It has a dream logic, which I can get into. Dream logic doesn't always work for me in films, but it does in a lot of David Lynch films and other films. But I would say this is dream logic, you might say, without the logic. Just dreams. There was no script, apparently. They asked David Lynch at one point, what is this film about? And he said, a woman in trouble. That's not very helpful, and it's pretty vague, really. I think it's just a series of a bunch of unrelated scenes that are almost randomly put together. He even kind of admits that. And I think what happened is he would have a dream, or he would have a creative moment, and a scene would pop into his head, so he would film it or write it out. And then maybe weeks later or days later or months later, he would have another scene pop into his head and then film that. And you know what? If you want to watch something like that, that's fine. But 3 hours, guys, of a bunch of different unrelated scenes. I don't know about you, but I have interesting dreams. Dreams generally, when you describe them to somebody, are kind of boring. But personally to you, they're interesting. And some of my dreams can be really cinematic and very dramatic and surreal. But I'm not about to put them on film and have people randomly watch it for 3 hours long. I mean, of course, he's David Lynch and he's the artist and all that. But I would say this is almost an avant-garde film. I'm not into avant-garde stuff. I don't like avant-garde music or avant-garde jazz or avant-garde art or avant-garde film. And if you do, that's great. Personally, I'm not into that. It's kind of a shame because there are some interesting David Lynchian visuals. One thing I forgot to mention with the Blue Velvet is he likes the factory look, an industrial look is another recurring motif in a lot of his films, and I kind of like that too. But those visuals are wasted here because it can't engage you. You're not involved in the story whatsoever. Like I said, it's just a bunch of random dreams strung together, and you don't care. And I'll be honest with you, after 2 hours, I turned it off and I thought, I don't know if I can finish this, but I wanted to be honest, so doing this video, so I watched the whole thing just so I didn't feel like a phony. One other thing that's really terrible about this film is he really uses a lot of close-ups and intense close-ups of people's faces using a fisheye lens. And that's annoying to begin with, but I'd say maybe a third to a fourth of the film is that. Intense close-ups of people's faces using a fisheye lens. I don't understand it. So, and by the way, the picture quality, well, he shot this on digital video, and then it was converted to HD, and then it was blown up to 35 millimeters. So you can imagine what it looks like. It varies widely as far as quality goes, from really terrible, really super grainy and almost blurry, to not bad at all, actually. So, and everything in between. So my rating for Inland Empire, as you probably guess, is 1 rabbit out of 5. Why rabbits? There's a recurring scene, maybe 4 or 5 times, of people in a rabbit costume standing upright, wearing suits and ties and dresses, and they're doing whatever. They're sitting on a couch and talking, or one woman is ironing, and it's just, I don't know what it meant. There's a bunch of stuff in here with a Polish family, and they're speaking Polish, and I'm not sure what they have to do with anything. It's just, it's all over the place. You also get Jeremy Irons showing up here, and Harry Dean Stanton, but there's nothing really much for them to do. They're just kind of in there. The 1 rabbit rating I gave it is really for Laura Dern, because she's one of my favorite actresses, and I think she's great. And but she really is a real trooper in this one, because they put her through the paces. But I would recommend some more obscure films to check out of hers, because she's made so many films. But check out something like Citizen Ruth, or the TV series Enlightened. I think it's an HBO series, really good. Rambling Rose, Smooth Talk. Those are very early in her career, but check some of those out. So what's on this disc? This is a Criterion disc. It's a 2-disc set. There's a booklet, which is about 40 pages long or so. I'll show it to you. And I thought, oh, cool, there's a booklet after I watched it, thinking maybe this will explain some of the film. Well, don't expect it to explain any of the film. It's mostly interviews with Lynch, and he's talking about meditation, which is fine. He's talking about the unified field. I'm not sure what that is, and a lot of it just, you know, where he got the ideas for this and stuff. It's just kind of over my head, or I don't know what it was supposed to mean. And so don't look for any explanations in the booklet at all. There are several extras on the second disc. There's a conversation between Laura Dern and Kyle MacLachlan, who I also like as an actor. They are both in Blue Velvet, and they are both in several David Lynch films and series, Twin Peaks. And they love him, and I'm sure it's great to work with him. They love him. They talk about him. They say Laura Dern makes the part that he shot this film on digital video, kind of a precursor many years ahead of time of shooting a film on an iPhone, which is what I'm using right now, an iPhone, which is cool, but it still has to be a good film, right? There are 2 documentaries. One's 90 minutes, one's 30 minutes. The 90-minute one is very unstructured. The picture quality of that varies as well. It's kind of cinema verite, both of those documentaries. The first one just kind of random, shots of Lynch talking about certain things, certain memories, and different techniques and stuff, and making stuff. The 30-minute one is more based on Inland Empire while he's making that film. And one interesting thing was you see him giving directions to some of the actors, and I rarely ever see that. I always wonder, what do the directors say to the actors? But you might see them talking to them, you rarely hear them, what they're saying. But so the couple scenes like that, which was interesting. But again, both those documentaries are, I watched, I'll be honest, I watched about 15 minutes of each one. At that point, I was kind of David Lynched out. And so I didn't do it. But the 30-minute one, the making of Inland Empire, sort of the making of, he's really hands-on. He's putting makeup on Laura Dern's face. He's doing some set construction, using bandsaws and stuff. So he's really hands-on. But as I was watching it, I thought, you know what? Inland Empire was probably more fun to make than it is to watch. So, a disappointment. Where can you see Inland Empire? If you have the Criterion Channel streaming service, it's on there, I think, right now, at least for this month. And you can also rent it on Amazon and probably on YouTube, something like that. Feel free to leave a comment or suggestion. Are you a David Lynch fan? What are your favorite films of his? Have you seen Inland Empire? Am I way off on this? Because, after I watched it and decided what I wanted to say, I did look at IMDb, and those ratings on there, user ratings, range from a 1 to a 10. So I guess people are split on it. But leave a comment or suggestion down below. I want to thank the following people who left a comment since our last episode: Michael, Kirk, Sid, Tina, Sam, I think, Co-Live, and Dr. Rock. Thank you so much for taking the time to comment. Leave a thumbs up. Don't leave a thumbs down. Subscribe would be great. Share this with your friends and neighbors. We're also on the Letterboxd app. That's free. Subscribing is free. On Letterboxd, I write brief reviews of other things I'm watching that I don't talk about here. And there's a link down below for that. Letterboxd under the Kazdoy closet. Otherwise, thanks so much for watching. Really appreciate it. And I will see you next time.